In our last lesson, we compared the piano and the orchestral versions of the fourth movement of Ravel's Valses nobles et sentimentales. In this lesson, we'll look at the first part of the first movement. But here our goal is not to compare the piano version with the orchestration, but rather to learn how Ravel constructs rich tutti textures. Here's the beginning of the movement. The opening gesture here alternates between middle range chords on the first two beats of each bar and high chords on the last beat. There's a clear sense of dialogue. Let's see how Ravel achieved this. We'll look at each family individually. The strings, apart from the basses, have middle range chords on the first two beats, with violin 1 and cello playing easy double stops for accent. The last beat of each bar is higher and pizzicato, again with easy double and triple stops. The basses play pizzicato all the time, only on the first and third beats, emphasizing the waltz rhythm. Ravel has two harps in this ensemble, which only play on the pizzicato last beats, adding more resonance to them. Harps are not very loud, which is why there are two of them, with each hand playing four-note chords. The brass are divided into two subsections. The horns and trumpets play full harmony all the time in the middle register. If they had been written higher, the overall effect would have been more brilliant, but that's not what Ravel is aiming at here, where their role is to provide a stable center while the other families alternate registers. The trombones and tuba, rather like the basses and the strings, accentuate the waltz rhythm. Note that the third beats are always higher and accented. Since the trombones are in a relatively high register, they add a rather cutting sound to the whole. The woodwinds stay in the middle register, but on the second and fourth bars they leap up higher on the last beat, as do the strings. Note on the first beat of each bar, all the upper woodwinds play in unison. Since they're playing the same note as the first trumpet, it requires a lot of them to make any difference at all. Now let's look at the percussion. The timpani do more or less the same thing as the cello, playing only on the first and third beats. The tambourine, the tambour de basque, plays the whole rhythm. But the other percussion underlies the alternating registers. The bass drum plays only on the first beat, and the snare drum and the suspended cymbal play only on the third beat. The triangle plays on the last beat only in measures 2 and 4, where the upper instruments also go higher. This is significant because it highlights the dialogue between registers in this passage. So, not only do the percussion instruments mark the rhythm, but they also help create the registral shape of the phrase. In this first phrase, everybody in the orchestra is playing. But a tutti doesn't necessarily require that. The riff I use for the word tutti is a passage where members of 3 orchestral families are present, but not necessarily all members of each group. In the next 2 bars, the harps disappear and the texture is a bit lighter. The melodies and the violins doubled by the flutes, English horn, and clarinets. The clarinets and second violins switch to octave doubling in measure 6. The oboe only comes in the second bar, adding a bit of a crescendo. The easy double stops in the second violins serve the same purpose in measure 6. Stability in the middle register here comes from the trumpets and trombones playing the same 2 notes, B and D, an octave apart. This is an important point that beginners don't realize. If everybody in the orchestra is going up or down at the same time, the effect can be a bit dizzying. Having this kind of stability in the middle register helps to unify the whole. Notice also how Ravel has given these instruments a hemiola kind of rhythm, which is highlighted by the tambourine. This adds rhythmic interest to the basic waltz pattern. The lower parts are doubled in the cellos, bassoons, and trombones. The downbeats are marked by timpani and double basses, still pizzicato. The other percussion, apart from the tambourine, have disappeared, lightening the texture. So, although in these 2 bars everybody's playing, apart from the harp, the tutti is organized quite differently from the first 4 bars. When we reach the first peak of the phrase in measure 7, the orchestration changes again. Now the violins have the main liner octaves. Flutes, oboes, and horns now have the hemiolic idea, with harp and glockenspiel in addition. The basic waltz rhythm is in the lower winds and the lower strings, with timpani in the first beat of each bar. Trumpets and trombones have disappeared for now. In measure 9-10, tambourine returns, adding to the overall crescendo. The phrase reaches its main peak in measure 11. Now the main line is now in the first violins, flutes and oboes in thirds, with the top line doubled an octave lower in violin 2. The trumpets also have the thirds an octave lower, but without the eighth notes on the last beat. This kind of heterophony is typical of good orchestration. Instead of literal grade doubling, the composer individualizes some of the parts. The overall effect is richer. Horns provide sustained resonance in the middle. The bass is in the tuba and the double basses, and it's enriched a fifth higher by trombone 3 and the cellos. The waltz rhythm is completed in the other trombones, the violas, the English horn, and the clarinets. The second harp accents the downbeats in measure 11 and 12. The percussion resembles the beginning, with the timpani and the bass drum on strong beats, snare drum and suspended cymbal on the third beats. The tambourine plays through each bar, reinforcing the melodic rhythm. Notice that the tambourine is already entered in measure 9 and 10 in the hemiola rhythm, so the changes in the percussion are not too sudden in measure 11. In measure 13 to 14, the texture changes again. Now the violin 1, viola, flutes, English horn, and clarinets have the melody in octaves, and the oboe and second violin double it, mostly in thirds. The brass and bass parts are unchanged here, but the percussion all disappear, apart from a tambourine roll, which reinforces the diminuendo. Usually percussion reinforces accents, but rolls like this one can highlight a crescendo or diminuendo. Once the line is descending to the bottom at the start of measure 15, we begin answering ascent. Notice how Ravel only adds flutes, oboes, and first violins, as well as tambourine rolls in measure 16 as the line rises. He's orchestrating the crescendo. Similarly, the melodic line in measure 16 is now doubled in octaves. The harmony here is in trumpets and horns, in the middle register, doubled by pizzicato, violas, and cellos. We arrive at the climax of the entire section here in measure 17 and 18. Orchestrally, the climax is marked by adding harps and glockenspiel, as well as the double basses in unison with the cello. The trombones return as well. Notice the easy double stops in the strings. In the second violins, it's clear that Ravel did not intend a 5-part divisé, but rather the section is divided in 2, with each half playing easy chords. Note the snare drum drags, the 2 race notes, which make their attack richer. Finally, there's a lower register response to the climax at the cadence. Note how Ravel has saved the timpani for here. The strings again have some easy double stops, and the basses play arco. The tuba returns as well. The snare drum reinforces the 8th note rhythm of the top line. For the final accent, bass drum and cymbal are added, making the attack stronger. The main point of this lesson has been to show how many different ways there are of orchestrating a tutti passage. Most beginners think only of doublings, but here we can see Ravel uses variations of timbre, register, and rhythm to give full ensemble so many different sounds. The extract we've looked at here is not even a minute long, but the refinement and variety of detail are staggering. This is why Ravel is recognized as one of the greatest orchestrators of all time.